Good day everybody, my name is Redeyes and welcome back to another What's This Then? Video series where today we're asking and answering the question, The Outer Worlds 2. What's this then? So The Outer Worlds 2 is, as you might imagine, the sequel to The Outer Worlds 1, latest game by Obsidian, published by Xbox Game Studios. Obsidian been on a bit of a weird one recently. The most recent game, Avowed, was definitely landed to a bit of mixed results, and I think a lot of that was to do with misplaced direction on what the game was sort of promoted as, and what the game eventually ended up being. I think Obsidian is relying Obsidian probably, or maybe Xbox, considering they own them now, are wanting Obsidian to lean very heavily on the fact that, hey, look, we're the people that made some of the best RPGs you've ever seen, you know? And it's very clear that the Obsidian of today is not the same studio that made those games. Now, are they still capable of making stuff like that? Probably. Well, maybe, it's a tough one to say, But, in a lot of their marketing, especially for Avowed, I think a lot of people assumed it was going to be Obsidian Skyrim, which is just not what that game was meant to be at all. It was much more of a combat and exploration focused game rather than story, characters, writing, stuff like that. It was less meant to be a real open, breathable world than an experience, you know. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I want to make that very clear. I enjoyed what I played of Avowed, and I do plan on going back to it. That month was crazy for games. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, and Avowed all in like the same month, I believe. But yeah, that leads me into the Outer Worlds 2. Outer Worlds 2, I would say, is more... I think people have a stronger idea of what this game is going to be, just because obviously this is a sequel. So we're expecting it to be like the Outer Worlds 1. And Outer Worlds 1 suffered from that problem as well of expectation. Everyone expected, we're going to see a Fallout New Vegas here. This is Obsidian's Fallout equivalent. And the Outer Worlds 1 was not that. But now we have Outer Worlds 2, and expectations are set based on the first game. And I think this one is going to land a lot more positively with people because of that. So it's an action-adventure RPG, which is such a broad term. Video game genre naming conventions are always confusing and forever will be. But I've put about 6 hours into this so far, and I've had a good time. I don't think this game is doing anything... Just to sort of get some quick thoughts off the chest here, I don't think this game is doing anything crazy, anything groundbreaking, anything revolutionary. There's a lot of really nice quality of life. It's really solid. It's really competent. It's very good in a lot of ways, and that makes the whole package feel really, really good to play. So, but before we get into the actual discussion of why it is that way, let's have a look at the settings menu, as we always do here. Now, interestingly, this is the main menu, and I don't believe I've ever seen a game really do this before, but the main menu is framed as a conversation with the sort of mascot of the Outer Worlds, the Moon Man. So you can say, like... Well, whenever I started up here, because I'm on hard difficulty, it was like, oh, like, reacting to the fact I'm on hard difficulty. And I think this is one of the things that Outer Worlds 2 actually does very well, and a lot of criticism they got from the first one was, like, reactivity and, like, choices and stuff like that. So I think even they've baked that into the main menu itself, that the game is reacting to your choices, which is quite funny. But yeah, you can, like, say, like, let me continue where I left off, and that's, you know, that's basically continue game. I want to start a new game, that's obvious. I'll load a save game, load one of your saves. Let me adjust my settings, you know, and then it takes you to a normal menu. Yeah, let's have a look at this before we hop into the gameplay itself. So, graphics, you've got pretty much everything you would ever really need in here. Now, this is an Unreal Engine 5 game, and we'll talk about that in a little second here. If you want a bigger breakdown of what settings are good and all that sort of stuff, although I will be showing them here, what I've got, I would recommend Digital Foundry's video where they talk about, like, some of the shortcomings of this game when it comes to Unreal Engine 5, especially when it comes to its, like, ray tracing, and I believe it uses some Lumen as well in some places. I think it's, like, baked in Lumen, and it has some issues there. It's also, the performance is not the best. For a game that looks like this, it is not running that well. I don't remember having any performance issues with Avowed off the top of my head, but this one I am certainly... it's not running as well as it should be, in my opinion. Running it on a 4090 and 7800X 3D. The game is feeling quite sluggish. Definitely above 60. Definitely above 60, but it's not like a stable. It's not a stable 60. It's quite a sluggish 60, you know. But one thing about this being Unreal Engine 5 is the notorious stutters. I am not suffering those. Now, that could just be not on my machine, but I haven't really been noticing any of the horrible hitching that Unreal Engine 5 can sort of bring to the table. Especially nothing even close to the Silent Hill 2 remake that happened. That game was active. Like, I could not keep playing that game because it was so bad. But thankfully none of that here. But general performance is lower than I would say, which seems to be a running trend with this shift to everything Unreal Engine. But yeah, actual settings-wise, you've got pretty much, you've got your DLSS, you got your frame rate limit, you got your resolutions, windowed mode. Always love me a windowed full screen. If you're on Windows 11, pretty much just always have it on windowed full screen, as far as I'm aware. I know exclusive full screen, this game does not have that, or sometimes it can have that, but it's not named that. I know exclusive full screen, though, can sometimes improve performance, although it's very minimal from game to game. Some games will benefit from it better than others. But Windows 11, or previous Windows versions, if you played in windowed full screen, you would deal with some form of input delay, because of how Windows handled non-full screen applications. But in Windows 11, from what I understand, that is not the case. There's no downside to putting it in windowed full screen. There's only upside as far as I'm concerned, because you can then just click off the game whenever you want. Alt-tabbing isn't a pain. But yeah, so you got all your DLSS stuff. I've got it on performance, because like I said, the native performance is not great here. And with DLSS currently, I am not really noticing any visual downside from using performance, so I just chucked it down there. Frame gen, I always try frame gen, and then I end up always like turning it off. Just never a big fan, because I hate the visual smoothness that I'm seeing, but I'm still feeling the input delay. And it just, my head doesn't like it. My brain just goes, no, that's wrong. You need to, one or the other here, buddy. You can't have both. But you got your low latency motion blur, always turn that off. There's some games I'll keep it on if it's a very stylistic game, but most games will have that off. And there's your hardware ray tracing and stuff like that. Like I said, probably shouldn't have that on. Digital Foundry's video talks about this. There's some really nasty shadow shimmering going on with this currently, so probably would not recommend it. And these are the settings that I'm currently running with. This is from the Digital Foundry video where they go over their optimized settings, and that you can get a noticeable FPS increase with minimal visual impact. So I'd recommend copying these. There's some slight caveats though. Textures, either, I think it was medium if you have less than 12 gigabyte of VRAM. But like I said, just go check out their video, it's really, really good. As always. Field of view, I just have that at 100. Always good to have that it can go up as high as it can, go up all the way up to 121. That's an interesting number for it. But yeah, that's not usually an FOV that you see in single-player games, so that's quite nice. Normally they cap out at about 90 or maybe 100, so nice to see it go all the way. Audio, not really a lot to talk about in here. It's all very, like, you know, basic stuff. Pretty much everything. You'll see wireless here. This is actually like, there's an in-game radio, kind of like the Fallout games. They're pretty fun. As far as I can tell, it's all like original music on there, so even if you're like streaming the game or whatever, then a lot of fun. Languages, conversation, you can do subtitles, conversation subtitles, all that sort of stuff. By default, subtitles are on, but cinematic subtitles are off, which is weird. Now, there's been a few like pre-rendered cutscene cinematic cutscenes going on, basically, and it's just weird that those are off by default, so you may want to turn those on if you like your subtitles. You can also do it for like audio logs and stuff like that, but I prefer that off. Controls, aim preference, you can do like, you know, hold, toggle, that sort of stuff, sprint, crouch, all that business, that's nice to see. Fully rebindable keys, as you would come to expect from the modern PC era. Mouse and keyboard, you can do your sensitivities. There is a bug relating to this currently in the game itself. Whenever I'm looking at the map, if I hold left click to drag the map around, sometimes when I come out of the map, my sensitivity is lowered, like really heavily lowered. It's really, really low. All you have to do is come into here and just do like that. And then that fixes it. You have to just move your sensitivity by like 1 point, and that sort of corrects it. Bit annoying, considering you'll probably, if you're like me, you're in the map a lot, so... and then you've got all your controller settings. This is the sort of game I could see myself playing with controller. Very chill, very sort of laid-back game. Although I am playing it on hard difficulty, and those fights can be actually kind of tough. We'll talk about how I quite like the difficulty settings in this so far. But gameplay, you can have show helmet on or off. This is for the fact that the game has a third-person mode, which the first one did not have. I believe Obsidian heard a lot of feedback from Avowed specifically about a third-person mode, and basically they were like, okay, we'll chuck it in. It's not terrible. It's quite usable. Not my personal preference of how to play, but yeah, it's alright. It does the job. Show companion helmets. You can do the same as well. Always on, always off, or just default. Show cinematic deaths. Enable slow motion cinematic camera on certain enemy deaths. Yeah, if you just shoot someone, you might get a little cool little cutscene. There's also motion sickness mode. It will reduce all the different things that affect motion sickness, such as head bobbing and stuff like that. There's also conversation camera sway. Sort of simulate that you are a person standing there looking at someone. A little bit of sway, so it's not like was it Oblivion? Where you just stare at each other, complete stone still. Perspective, there's the third person. There's also third person near and far. If you hit, I think it's U by default on mouse and keyboard, then you can switch between all those whenever you want, and you can use alternate shoulder if you wish. Aim assist, blah blah blah. It's controller stuff usually. And then we go into the UI. You've got like text size. This is very good because I'm playing on a 4K 32-inch monitor, so being able to mess with that sort of stuff is always appreciated. But the default scaling is good in my opinion. I can turn tutorials off. You can tooltip damage display. You can change it between DPS and damage, which is nice. I know a lot of people would like to know, like, just how hard does one shot hit, or I want to know just the overall DPS of my gun. Show base item stats, you can have that on if you wish. Floating damage text, now this is one that I like to mess about with, depending game by game basis. I haven't turned it off yet to see what it's like, but I remember playing Avowed thinking I would prefer it off, and then I turned it off, and then I actually really liked it on, so... one that's good to play with there. Show input hotkeys, that's always nice because on the HUD there's a bunch of different things you can do gameplay-wise, so having these there is nice because they're not on the most normal keys by default. And then you've got like tons of different like HUD scaling things. You can just turn things on or off, interaction outlines, gadget energy meter. You can do whatever you want with the HUD scaling, to be honest. Minimap. Do all sorts. You can show the player FOV cone if you really want all that and stuff. Conversations, like look at all these different like subtitle options just for the conversations. Status bar and tags, reticule, tons of different stuff, tons of different ways to mess with the UI, which is always very, very nice to see. Yeah, that's the settings. And like I said, this is done like a conversation, so there he is. Now, I'm going to... It's slightly different for this video. Normally, I would do actual gameplay of me, like, playing while we talk. However, I did stream this game last night, and I'm thinking I'm going to throw up some footage in the background from that stream. Now, it will be live, uncut gameplay, so you will be seeing what it is like to just play the game, instead of there being, like, cuts to different points and stuff like that. And then from there, I will discuss my first impressions over about 6.5 hours or so of playing the game. So, let me just throw up some gameplay in the background here for you, and then yeah, we'll talk about it. Alright, so the footage you're seeing in the background is from my stream. From the launch day there. So if you like what you see, or if you'd be interested in seeing some of my first impressions sort of live, then be sure to hang around on the channel, because I live stream here and I live stream on the Twitch. Both the link will be in the description for that. And also I upload any of the gameplay onto a secondary channel as more of like a playthrough. So you'll see like, Outer Worlds Stream 1 on the secondary channel, whereas the stream here, the stream VOD here will just be, just the whole thing, completely uncut sort of thing. But yeah, let's actually speak about the game a little bit, shall we? So, we went over the settings, and I said toward the end there that I would speak about the difficulty. So, the difficulty settings, I really enjoy in how this game does the difficulty. It's got easy, normal, hard, and very hard. And basically what these do is increase enemy damage. No enemy health scaling, unless you're going to easy, in which case it reduces enemy health. Enemies just hit harder, the higher the difficulty you go. And I really, really like this difficulty system. Now, is it the best difficulty system ever? No. Is it the most elaborate, the most complex, the one that does the most interesting stuff? No. But is it the most realistic, that is probably the best solution? Yes, in my opinion. Ideally, now in the world of CRPGs, this is the case, but can't expect this for every game. CRPGs tend to have it where higher difficulties mean enemies get smarter and they do extra moves that they wouldn't normally have had and stuff like that. Like, see Divinity Original Sin 2. Playing that game on harder difficulty, enemies are like legitimately smart and do extra things that they wouldn't normally do. That is the ideal way to do difficulty, in my opinion. However, when it comes to games like this, that can be a lot of work. That can be a lot of work, and you're putting a lot of stuff into, you're putting a lot of features into things that maybe a lot of players aren't going to see, so I can absolutely understand why this isn't a priority for a lot of games. However, making everything making everything stronger in terms of how much damage they do, and not increasing health, I think is the best way to do it. There's nothing I dislike more about a harder difficulty that just makes everything a sponge. It's very upsetting when this happens, because it just takes the fun out of it for me. See God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok. I think playing those games on the hardest difficulty is absolutely the worst way that you can play those games, in my opinion, because they just become absolute slog fests of combat. Now, it sort of alleviates itself once you get into the game itself more, like halfway through and stuff like that. You're just doing so much damage and combos and gear and stuff that you kind of beast your way through it, but at least initially, like, it's rough. And I know that's a personal preference thing, so maybe you'll like that, maybe you won't, I don't know, but for me, doing it this way is ideal. Just means the combat is just so much more tense without it being spongy and tedious. And there you go, that's about it. Now, spoken on the difficulty, let's speak on the technical aspect. I'll be going over a couple of things that I went over during the settings portion of the video here, just because I know some people skip that sort of thing. So, technical state is a bit of a mixed bag. General performance, like frame rate, is lower than I would like, especially considering how much this game visually looks not too all dissimilar from Avowed that came out earlier in the year. And from what I remember, Avowed ran pretty well. No issues really running Avowed. So just for context, I'm playing on a 4090 7800X3D at 4K, and I'm having to run like DLSS at performance, with not everything on the highest settings. Now, if you want to know my settings, I showed them earlier in the video, but also I just recommend going and watching Digital Foundry's video on it. That's where I got my settings from. They have a optimized settings, maximal visual clarity while also highest frame rate, lower some settings, but keep the visuals pretty much not unchanged. So would recommend that. I've put on those settings. The game feels just sluggish. It's not bad. It's not like, oh, I'm running at like 30, 40 frame rate. Like, what is this? And it's above 60. It's definitely above 60. But it just feels sluggish. It's not a consistent 60. It's not a higher number. It doesn't reach that high. So it just gives this, when you have inconsistent frame rates and you have them not also going that high, it gives a general feeling of sluggishness, in my opinion. And you can just sort of feel it. Now, when I say so sort of feel it, this is the sort of thing that you're going to notice more on mouse and keyboard than you will notice on a controller, because mouse and keyboard is a more direct one-to-one input method, whereas a controller, the analog stick, kind of hides a bunch of this in the interim, sort of between your movement and its interpretation of the movement. So if you're playing on that input, you may not notice this as much, and also this could just be a on my machine TM situation. So, but keep that in mind as it will. Now, technical state in terms of bugs and stuff, I haven't really run into anything. I have run into one specific bug that is easily fixable, but is just minorly annoying, but it's not like game breaking or anything. But as always, check out like other people's reviews and videos and stuff like that, because I am only one person, I am only testing on one machine, so. But the bug I had was whenever I open up the map and scroll around, whenever I would come out of the map, sometimes my sensitivity would be way lowered, like really, really slow. It was like someone halved the DPI on my mouse sort of thing. Really, really annoying. the first time it happened when I was trying to figure out how to fix it. But I figured out that if I just go into the settings and up the sensitivity by 1 or 2 and then lower it again, or just, yeah, up it by 1 and then save, that completely fixes it, which, yeah, it's not the worst bug in the world. There's far worse out there, but it's annoying, and I hope that gets fixed. But other than that, I haven't really noticed anything else, you know, like no crazy physics glitches or characters teleporting in and out or anything crazy like that. Nothing game breaking, nothing cyberpunk on release level. So that's nice. Now, that's the technical state. Let's talk a little bit about the premise. So the premise, we're set in the same sort of place as Outer Worlds 1. You know, corporations, evil, very tongue-in-cheek, that sort of style. Takes place in an area of space called Arcadia, and we're kind of locked in there due to circumstances. I'll not be spoiling anything. The footage in the background, by the way, is just from the first area once the game sort of opens up proper, and I'm just wandering around randomly. It's not there's no story stuff happening at all here. Yeah, you play as a sort of an Earth Directorate agent, or commander specifically, and their role in this universe now is to sort of police the corporations. I don't believe they were in the first one at all. If they were, you know, not really in the game at all. But in this one, you play as someone who goes in and, you know, polices the corporations essentially. So I think it's a good place to start, especially because you can kind of set up your character to be like, oh, I only joined this to get away from my past, you know. So it's very easy to be like, oh, I just actually don't care about, you know, the setting of my character because, you know, this is an RPG and I can kind of go any way I want with it, and I believe the game facilitates that very well. Yeah, that's the sort of premise. We are after a person for something they did, and that is our sort of through line, our motivation to move through the game. Which I think it's all set up, you know, fairly well. It's a good first step for getting us into this world of an RPG. Now, let's speak on the visuals. As you can see in the background in the footage, it's a very vibrant game. Lots of very, very nice colors. You can definitely tell that this and Avowed came out in the same year because there's definitely some asset reuse on the go here. Or I'd be shocked if there wasn't. If this was all original, then I would actually say Obsidian is stupid, because they absolutely should be reusing assets, especially if it can be so easily transplanted like this. And if it's not clear, I think asset reuse is an incredibly smart thing that all devs should be doing. FromSoft have been doing it for years. The Like a Dragon, Yakuza devs have been doing it. They basically said all their games they see as like a TV show that has sets, and they just repurpose the sets, you know? And they bring out a game every year that's like incredible. So yeah, absolutely should be doing that. Saves time, saves money. It's just a fantastic idea. And I think a lot of people like to get twisted about how it would annoy them when in reality they don't care. I think in reality doing that sort of thing just doesn't really matter. Obviously there's levels to these things, but as a whole, absolutely all devs should be doing it. But yeah, visuals, really colorful, really pretty game to look at in terms of color and stuff like that. In terms of actual like texture work and stuff like that, it's an Unreal Engine 5 game, so the textures look, you know, they look good, they look fine. It's kind of hard to say because a lot of Unreal Engine games, the texture works are all the same, you know. It's mostly just about the visual style now in terms of all these ones using this engine. Now, this game does suffer from some of the UE5 shortcomings, which is like, it has a slight problem where if you were to come across a new asset very quickly, you can very much notice the detail loading in, which can be a real jarring situation for a lot of people. So like if I load into a new building and then I quickly run up to something and just focus on it, or sometimes it can happen in more natural ways where if you just load in and maybe you'll see something in the distance just sort of, it's not pop in, it's like it's loading in essentially. It's a weird distinction to make, but essentially it starts by loading in as a lower textured version of itself to save on performance, and then slowly, or it should be fast, but UE5, and then it slowly loads in with more detail. I have noticed this from time to time. Not enough to say that I would really be like, oh, this really takes me out of the game. I can't play this. This is horrible. But it's there. I would be remiss not to mention it, not to bring it up. So it is there. Other than that, I mean, the visual style of this game is fantastic. I think the Outer Worlds 1 and now the Outer Worlds 2 have a really strong visual identity that this one keeps up, absolutely. All the armors, even the UI, the architecture, just everything looks very looks very nice. It looks very this game. It's a very strong visual identity. So, and this one keeps that up. So in that regard, not a lot to really complain about, apart from that just little tiny UE5 bit of texture load that you see every now and again. Haven't really noticed any like actual pop-in from things, actual entities in the world and stuff like that, so that's nice. Now, let's speak a little bit about the music and sound design. Music, I haven't really noticed anything too crazy going on here. It's mostly just par for the course, standard stuff, action music, a little bit of, adventure music every now and again. The one thing the music does stand out in is they have a radio system in this game now, a bit like the Fallout games, where you can tune into two different propaganda stations that spout propaganda constantly, and then will also play nice music in between that. It's either Anti's Choice or the Protectorate, so you're getting either corporate, free market, propaganda, and then music based around that, because it's all original. As far as I can tell, all the music in this is original. Some of the songs are definitely just made for the world. They're about the different corporations and stuff, which is really, really fun. I think it's a great addition to the game. Fits in perfectly. Fits that like Fallout vibe that the first Outer Worlds was kind of bigging up. It was kind of not really promising to be it, but definitely was trying to pretend it was going to be it a little bit, or it wanted you to believe it was going to be a little bit. And you can see in the background there, I was just testing if there was swimming in the game. There is not. But yeah, the music on the radios is absolutely fantastic. Great. Just turn it on, walk around, have some good music blasting. Good old time. Now, sound design in terms of like, general ambient noise, gun sounds, all that sort of stuff. It's all good. It's all good. Nothing stands out as like, oh, that didn't sound so good, or oh, that was a bit low quality. Oh, someone didn't work on that one very well. No, nothing like that. It all does the job. The voice acting is so far good. I haven't heard any voice lines yet that I would be like, damn, someone wasn't getting paid enough for that one. But at the same time, I haven't heard any voice lines that are like, oh, someone phoned it in that day, sort of thing. So all the dialogue's been pretty darn fantastic. Haven't really, nothing to complain about there really. Now, let's speak about the real meat and potatoes of the game, which is the gameplay. So this sequel is very much one of those sequels that's like, okay, how can we improve on what we did the first time? Because there's, as far in my mind, there's two kinds of sequels, and there's how can we improve what we did the first time, and there's what can we do different, or like what can we just rapidly change, or not rapidly, but like massively change. How can we make this sequel an evolution rather than iterative, essentially? This one is very much an iterative one. They took a lot, it feels so far like they've taken a long look at the critiques to the Outer Worlds 1, and they've said, okay, how can we make this one stand up to those critiques? And in a lot of the ways, I think they've done so. So, actual gunplay, like moment-to-moment gameplay, walking around, gunplay, that's all fine. That was all fine in the first one, it's all fine here, does the job. Couple of things that are a bit different. So you may notice in the bottom right here of the footage, there is a little wheel down there, and one of them is a little purple reticule. That is your tactical time dilation. Now, that was in the first game, but that was like a baked-in thing to your character that they could just do, and that was kind of like it was kind of like the game's VATS equivalent, essentially. In this game, that is now a gadget slot. So you can take off your tactical time dilation and replace it with another gadget. And I think this is an absolutely fantastic system in the game. So the other gadget that I have found so far is one that would be way more useful for like a stealth melee character than the tactical time dilation would be. It's like this little acid spray that dissolves dead bodies. Because if you're trying to do stealth and someone finds a dead body, then you've been detected, blah, blah, blah. Whereas with this little corrosive spray, then you can just dissolve bodies, and that makes that playstyle just so much more fun and interesting. And now you've got this aspect of the game that you can still engage with because it's now based around your playstyle. And I just think that's a really fantastic way of doing it. And now I'm really interested in seeing what other gadgets that I'm going to be finding, because the tactical time dilation is like cool and all, but you know, sometimes you want to change it up. And this has added a world of possibilities, especially in this sort of setting where they've made it so that science can kind of just do anything, you know? So who knows what crazy stuff we're going to see. The other one next to that on the wheel at the bottom right is sort of like explosives, like grenades and stuff. So I found explosive grenades, I found like decoy grenades, and then under that is like the weapon wheel, just what weapon you're holding. Lets you know if it's like a kinetic or an energy or something like that. Nothing too crazy going on with the rest of it there. Now, the next thing I really want to point out that they've done for the gameplay is this is the healing. So, if you remember from the first game, the healing was basically stim packs from Fallout. You just accrued a ton of healing, and whenever you got into a fight, you literally just huffed your inhaler. You just ran around like someone who has asthma, and you were just chugging that inhaler. And it basically made all the combat scenarios kind of not threatening in any real way, because anytime you get into a nasty fight, well, I'll just spam the heal button 8 times and then I'm fine. The way this game has done it is quite an elegant solution to that problem, and it definitely feels like they were really thinking about that. Basically, the inhaler has charges, and you'll see at the bottom there, the little inhaler symbol next to the Z. It's got 4 little pips under it. So you need to fill up those pips, then you get 1 use of the inhaler. Now, you fill it up through different means, but the main way that you do it is if you find drugs, and that fills up the inhaler. And then, like I said, once the inhaler gets full, then it's a charge, and it stays there forever until you use it. Now, what's to stop you building up a ton of charges and then just spamming them? I hear you ask. It's a good question. There is a bar under the health bar, and it's called the toxicity bar, or the toxicity meter. When you heal with the inhaler, depending on what's in the inhaler, and that's another thing we'll come to, depending on what's in the inhaler, it will fill up a certain amount of toxicity. If that toxicity bar reaches full, you cannot heal anymore until it goes back down. And it's a lengthy time for that thing to go back down. So if you were to hit that toxicity meter in a fight, you're probably not healing again using it until that fight's over, unless it's a really long fight. So I think this is a really elegant solution of fixing this problem while still maintaining the type of healing that you want. And then, like I said, stuff that you can put in the inhaler, it's basically got 4 slots, only 1 is unlocked by default. I believe probably the medical skill or maybe some other things in the game will unlock more. But essentially, you can take these, I forget the word they use, but it's essentially something that you put into the inhaler. I think it's a primer. A primer, I think, is what they call it. And they have different effects, and whenever you use the inhaler, it does that effect. So, you would have, I think the default one is it heals for 300 over a certain amount of seconds. So, use the inhaler, and then you'll slowly start regenerating health up to 300, and then you're done. I did find another one that was heals 200 health, but does it instantly. Just rapid, done. 200 health, done. But it uses more toxicity as well. Now, if I was to unlock more slots, I could put both of those in there, and now I'm healing 500, but 300's over time and 200's instant, but the amount of toxicity that would use would be crazy. I would basically get 1 use of that in a fight, and then it would be like, okay, on to the next one, essentially. I think this is a really good system, because now the whole healing aspect of the game now has something I can look forward to. I can look out for new primers that completely impact the way I heal now. What this does, it really reminds me of Borderlands 4 had a similar system with its stim healing mechanic, and they had different effects based on what manufacturer and all that sort of stuff. So it feels very similar to that. I think it works a lot better in the context of this game though. I really, really like it. Big fan. And then let's see, what should we talk about next? Okay, so there's crafting in the game. there's crafting. Now, normally when there's crafting in these sorts of games, I am not a huge fan of them. I tend to sort of sidetrack them and like, if I can ignore it, then I will. However, this game, very crucially, obviously has like an inventory system, but as far as I can see, there is no inventory limit. You can just pick up anything and everything as much as you want. And I personally think that is the way that most of these sort of RPGs should be done, unless the game has a higher focus on like crafting and needing an inventory limit to impose some kind of actual limit from scavenging or something like that. These sorts of games, I personally don't think need inventory limits. And what this means is that you can just pick up everything. If you see it, just pick it up. And then whenever you go to craft later, have you got it? Well, you found it, so you got it. And it makes the crafting a really smooth, really sort of, I want to say simple. Yeah, I suppose it would be simple. Yeah. A smooth and simple approach when I think that's the way they should be in these sorts of games, because I don't want the crafting getting in the way of what I'm here for. You know, I don't want it to get in the way of me going around exploring. I don't want to suddenly have my inventory be full because I'm picking up a load of crap that's used for crafting, and now I have to like go back and drop it all off so I can come back and loot more. You know, it doesn't get in the way of that at all. It's really, really cool. Really, really fun system. Now, one thing that you can sort of use the crafting for, just to sort of lead into the next part here, is weapon mods, consumables. Like, you can use like the lockpicks or like mag picks, like they're called. Armor mods, that sort of stuff. So you can craft all these sorts of things and then put them into your armor. So the crafting does become a loop to making your character stronger and stuff like that. So it all works really well. It's just a nice smooth way it all feeds into each other. It's a really elegant little way of doing it. Again, not the craziest like way I've ever seen. They're not the first to do it, certainly not. But for me, for how I like these sorts of games, for how I like my crafting systems, this all works really, really well, and I am a huge fan of it. Oh, also as well, just before I forget, I just remembered a slight detail there. The healing. So there is no way to heal other than the inhaler when you're in combat, by the way. However, you can heal with food outside of combat. Now, what do most games make you do whenever they have a food healing system is it's like, oh, go into your inventory and click, you know, to eat all that food. In this game, when you're out of combat, the inhaler icon in the middle there moves off to the side and changes into a food icon, if you have food. And then you just press Z, or whatever the key for you will be, or the controller button, and it just eats all the food to get your whatever amount of food it needs to eat to get you up to full health. Really, really fantastic. Just a fantastic quality of life. Just, I would feel bad if I didn't mention that, because it's just really, really good system. I enjoy it very much. But yeah, wanted to get that out there. Now, the next bit of gameplay I want to discuss on is the actual character creation and the game's reactivity to how you build your character. So, it's very similar to the first one. You have your skills, and then you have your perks. So skills, stuff like engineering, lockpicking, guns, that sort of stuff. So you put points into that, and they also give you passive stat bonuses. So like, if you put it into guns, you do 10% more damage with guns per point in guns. Engineering, I think it makes your armor more effective, if I remember right. I didn't put any points into engineering, so I can't quite remember, but yeah, so that sort of stuff. And these do have so far, these have had a very noticeable impact across the game. In the intro section, just as I've been exploring, I have noticed various dialogue choices, various exploration-based options that are like, oh, I can't do this because I don't have that. Oh, I can do this because I have this. Absolutely fantastic. If that keeps up the whole way through the game, incredible. That was one of the things I heard about from the Outer Worlds 1, was that the stats and stuff didn't really seem to impact a huge amount of the game. And it seems they have taken that to heart with this. They seem to have a huge impact. one of my favorite new additions is this. Is there a skill called Discovery? If you've played CRPGs, you'll be familiar with the concept of a perception stat that lets you just find hidden objects in the world. They've added that into this, and essentially, once you go near a hidden sort of item, you'll get this like question mark appears over your reticle, and it sort of points you in the direction of it. Then you look at it, and then it takes a second, and then it's like, boom, there it is. You found it. What is it? And then it could be a sneaky way past an enemy. It could be a secret little stash that someone hid and was only visible like a tiny little bit. So this is fantastic. I love this system. I can already see so many different ways that you could play a game. Like one of the things I saw, there's traits in the game as well, so that they give you some kind of buff. But the more traits you take, you have to take negative ones. So you can have one positive trait for free, but if you want 2 positive traits, you have to take a negative trait. And one of the negative traits was just called dumb. And essentially it was that 5 of the skills you can never level. You have to pick 5 and you will never be able to level them. The rest, fine. 5 of them, you can never touch. And now that I've seen how these certain things are actually impacting conversations and interacting with the environment, like doing a dumb playthrough could be on the level of like a Fallout 1 or Arcanum, you know, where your character is legitimately stupid and the world reacts to it. And I think that's fantastic. One of the ones I really enjoyed was I picked there was a trait called Lucky, and it's just, I think it was 5% more crit chance, but also it said underneath it, your character just like gets a chance to do things, or gets a chance to find things that others wouldn't, or something like that. I forget the exact wording, but it was something to that effect. And so far, that has revealed itself to be like, oh, I found this path because I stumbled across it, and the game just went like, oh, hey, there it is, because you're lucky. In a conversation, I just guess an answer, and it happens to be right because I got lucky. Or, here's this machine. If you have enough science, you could reprogram it. Or, if you have lucky, you could just fucking hit buttons. Just hit buttons, and you get lucky. And it's fantastic. It's all working really, really well. Like I said, the main crux of this will be if it can keep that up throughout the entire game. But given how hard they've gone on it initially, like, I can't imagine it faltering, really. It's so much fun. It makes the character building aspect feel so involved and so rewarding to have done. And when you think about it, and you're like, oh, I want this because I want my character to feel like this, and then the game rewards you with situations that make you feel like that way you wanted your character to feel. It's fantastic. Really, really big fan of how it's doing all that. The game also has perks. Very Fallout New Vegas style. Every 2 levels, you get access to a perk. Certain perks you will only be able to get if you're a certain level. Certain perks you will only be able to get if you have a certain amount of other perks. Certain perks you will only be able to get if you have a certain skill to a certain level. Certain perks you will only be able to get if you have a combination of all 3 of these things. You know, so there's a big variety in the perks. One I found was, or one perk I got was Treasure Hunter, and basically anytime I'm loading a container, there's a chance it has extra stuff in it. I always like to get those early because then it just compounds itself and gets more and more valuable as the game goes on. But what it also gives me to do is I found a treasure map. Now, I probably could have followed that treasure map myself. It wasn't the most complex treasure map in the world, but because I had the Treasure Hunter perk, I was able to interact with the map, and then my character just figured it out because they're a treasure hunter, they know what treasure maps are, and then it actually put the point on my map because my character figured it out, and I didn't have to worry about it because my character had the Treasure Hunter perk, and he just knew. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was going to be a thing. It didn't even mention that in the perk. It's just something that makes sense, you know? Like, yes, my character should be able to do that. It's called Treasure Hunter. I found a treasure map. My character would be good at reading treasure maps. Fantastic stuff. Really, really good. Probably the biggest part of the game that I am the most impressed with so far. They really took the interactability criticisms of the first game to heart, it seemed. Big props to them on this one for that. But yeah, in terms of gameplay, that's really really about it. I mean, you've got conversational systems as well. It's all very similar to the first game. Certain dialogue options if you have speech, stuff like that. But also all your skills can interact with them if you're just engineering and you're speaking to someone who's an engineer and they have an engineer problem, and then you can tell them I'm an engineer and then fix the problem. Stuff like that. Questing is pretty standard stuff as well. Pick up a quest. Here's it on the map. Go find it. You can get these like heard of quests where you haven't got it from anyone, but you've heard someone mention it, and then it can be like, oh, someone mentioned this, maybe you should go looking into it, and then it becomes like sort of like this quasi quest that you go find the person to get the quest from. So it's pretty cool. I like all that. All the systems just work really well together. That's really the long and short of it. It all feels like everything just feedback loops into itself really, really well. Suppose also there's the companions as well. Just I noticed one of the companions dying in front of me on the footage there. The companion system works pretty much exactly the same as it did in the first one. The only difference that I have really been able to see is that the companion abilities no longer have the cool little cinematic cameras that they used to do. I remember in the Outer Worlds 1, because I would have Parvati with me 24/7 because she is the best character in that entire game. You would use her special ability where she came in with like a massive hammer and smack someone and do this cool little cinematic of her doing that. That sort of thing is gone, unfortunately. Just takes some of the flair out of it. I would have preferred if they had kept that, but maybe give a toggle to turn it off. I think that would have been the best way to do it, but it is what it is. They have little cooldown abilities. They can die in combat. You can go and revive them. It doesn't cost anything. It just takes 2 seconds, like you see there. So that part of the game is perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable. There's also a skill that you can level up called Leadership, and that increases companion health and damage. So if you want to do I don't want to kill anyone, but I'll let them do it kind of build, then you absolutely can. Yeah, in terms of gameplay, that's I think that's all I really want to talk about. I mean, there's like stealth and melee combat and all that sort of stuff, but it's all fairly standard. Works very much the way it did. The melee combat feels good. I haven't really done too much of it with dedicated melee weapons, but there's a quick melee and it feels weighty. So I can imagine. I remember thinking in the first Outer Worlds that the melee felt way better than I thought it had any right to. So it's a similar situation in this one as well. Actual exploration as well. I suppose I should touch on that. Is a lot of fun. I think that has taken a massive upgrade from the first game, at least in this first area. I just spent ages walking around this first little map, just finding all sorts of little things that it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to figure this out. Oh, I'm gonna figure this out. Oh, I wonder if this will be a quest later. Oh, no, actually, no, something I can figure out now. All that sort of stuff. Little hidden notes, hidden little mini stories going on. All really, really good stuff. I really don't have much to complain about in terms of the gameplay here. It's more of the first one, but better in pretty much every conceivable way. It seems like the weapon rarity system as well, just as I'm seeing it in front of me here, it sort of reminded me, it's not the most, it's not the craziest change in the world. I believe in the first game, the way weapon rarity worked is you would have like Mark 1 pistol, and then you would have advanced Mark 1 pistol, and then that would be like the tier 2 version of it that would be stronger. Whereas this game's just gone with the color RPG approach of the normal one's the normal color, and then the green colored one, that's the next best one, and the blue colored one, it's doing it like that. Which a lot of games seem to be going for these days, and it's not the worst system in the world. Conveys the information very straightforwardly to a lot of people, so don't mind that at all. But just, it's alright. So the actual story so far, after sort of done speaking about gameplay there, the actual story so far I think has been fairly compelling. Like I said earlier, the premise is a good setup, but the actual story of like meeting different characters and people's motivations and stuff like that, like it's all been pretty good so far. Nothing too crazy. I'm hoping that part of the game is going to step up. Side quests have been interesting. Side quests have certainly been fun. It's got that Outer Worlds, like, just humor to it, where it's all very corporate, but all very dark, but ironic and tongue-in-cheek at the same time. Like, it's good stuff. I don't really have too much to talk about, especially because I'm not really that far into it yet. But it's a good setup with the intro. Again, I'm not gonna speak into too much detail about it because I don't want to like ruin anything. But you know, the person we're after, I do legitimately feel like, hey, I want to get after that person, and I want to fix the thing that happened. You know, it feels pretty good in that way. So there's not really a ton to talk about there. Or at least not yet in the game. It's going to be one of those slow burns that as you know, it's more about getting you into the game and doing side quests and exploring, and then the story will take us to the next place, and then maybe the story will surprise me and it'll be, you know, really in depth and, you know, quite engaging. You know, who knows? But so far it's fine. It does a job. But yeah, I think sort of give a bit of a conclusion on this one. I have been having a really good time with this one. I have been looking forward to it coming out, and it is pretty much hitting everything I would want from an Outer Worlds 2. The gameplay is refined, improved, great quality of life, so much more interactivity. And that's my favorite part, is just the interactivity. Really makes me feel really good about all the choices I'm making, and also makes me want to do like another playthrough immediately with all these different choices and stuff. So that's the biggest, and for an RPG, that's the, well, what more could you ask for, you know? And the combat's fun. The combat is fun. It's very similar to the first one. Feels good, looks good. Voice acting across the board has been good. All these little moments that you just sort of stumble across are just always so much fun. Really rewards exploration. I want to get out there and I want to just find things, and I love it when an RPG instills that feeling in me. I really do. I want to get out there, and I want to look under every rock and behind every tree and just find what this game has hidden for me. But yeah, so that is the Outer Worlds 2, and that is my thoughts on it. Hopefully you've enjoyed my first impressions. Hopefully this more laid-back approach of putting the footage in the background, you know, a bit of chill music, and I just sort of chat about it. Hopefully this is still just as good. But yeah, the game comes out on the 29th. It is out now for the Advanced Access. Personally still not a fan of Advanced Access as a concept, which may come off as hypocritical right now, considering how I've been able to get you this footage and play the game. However, a code for this was given to me by a friend for my birthday, and it was like a CD keys code, which they just messaged me and said, like, hey, put this code into the Windows Store. I was like, I had to go message them on another platform and be like, have you been hacked? You've just sent me a code and said redeem it with no context. You know, can't be too careful. And yeah, so that's how I got my hands on it. Personally, the whole Advanced Access thing, it became a thing like 10 years ago, and everyone was very much against it. And now it just seems to have just sort of swooped in and taken place, you know, relatively quick. And just it'd be nice if it wasn't there. But yeah, but everyone's gonna have their own take on that sort of thing. Other than that, yeah, so you can pick up the game on Steam for $59.99 or £59.99 or $69.99. It is also on Game Pass, but only if you're with the new Game Pass changes. This a value proposition like this is very different depending on where you're playing. Because if you're on console or anywhere that isn't PC, then I believe you have to pay for the Game Pass Ultimate, which is like £22 or $30. Whereas if you're on PC, then PC Game Pass remains relatively unchanged, rather apart from being like a couple of pound more expensive, but you can still get day one access to these games and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be on PC Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate, which, you know, I think is an absolutely horrendous change that they've made. But yeah, other than that, game's good. Obsidian has really done well here. Obsidian is such an interesting company. They have some of the highest highs I've ever seen in a company, and it feels like their past little while has been them just trying to relive the glory days of some of their high highs and just not quite reaching it. And now I feel like with Outer Worlds 2, they have kind of accepted, hey, we are not making a Fallout New Vegas ever again. I don't believe they'll ever make a Fallout New Vegas type game ever again. in terms of that quality. And they've settled on this type of RPG, like the Outer Worlds, the Avowed, and they've really leaned into it with this one, and I think it's really paid off for them, because this feels really competent, this feels really well made, this feels like it has a lot of care actually put into it, just feels good to play. Yeah, that's probably the biggest good word I could say about it. It feels like they found their spot again, you know, as a company with their current workforce and stuff like that, you know, the developers they have and the talent and the skill sets that they have access to. This feels like where they should be. And I'll be interested to see if they continue to go out from here, or if they maybe want to stay here for a bit, or... As always, I'm always looking forward to anything Obsidian's doing. I really am. Yeah, had a good time with this one. Thank you very much for watching. A bit more of a chilled back, laid back on this one. But hopefully you enjoyed. And I shall catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.